So just to finish that, so I apologize. So it's pretty simple. You pick the qualified one. The engineering company, Avalar, vets them out. The mobilization takes place, and they will have put forth what their duration is. So it might be 6 months. I suspect it probably will be. And then the process starts.
So,
Right. So,
Sarah, are you saying that even if everything were the contracts, the bids, everything that's paperwork, if all of that is done, the work would still take 6 months, which would be
uh,
this December.
I haven't seen the contractor's proposed timeline.
No, no,
They
I
all
know
might
no one
propose.
has, but I'm just wondering, is that an estimate that, in your opinion, is possible?
For the scope of work.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty doable.
okay. So,
You know,
And I would think we would have to have the money in the bank before we sign the contract. We can't speculate that we'll get enough money through the 2026 assessment or or a special assessment to,
well, well, we have the money in reserves,
yeah.
it's the money. The money's in the bank, and
but we
I've
don't.
all I've cautioned against this, and now you want to do another special assessment. But
No,
that's
we don't want to do that.
ev but I don't think there's any room for that. Everybody has known this has been 4 years.
hmm
What this proposed scope is. So uh, there should be about 1,700,000. Is that right, Christina?
I think that's close.
Yeah, in the bank.
Yeah.
So,
I think Richard Wodehouse expected these bids to come in closer to $4 million. He was
well,
ex
we received bids before.
uh-huh.
Well, Dan and I received two bids, and they were 3.8 million.
Hmm.
And so, yet again, I am really want to know, what did they bid, right? Did they bid three sides, north, south, east? I mean, sorry, east, west, and south. Did they bid the three sides? And in their bidding process, did they use spec? I mean, they probably should have, but
Yeah. So,
just to check, because
so
receiving two bids 3.5 years ago, at a substantial amount higher than what was received, it always gives me pause.
mhm. Well, assuming Avalar indeed delivers their analysis on Friday and it gets out to the committee, should the committee is it urgent enough for the committee to hold a special meeting to evaluate those, or can we wait a month to get the committee feedback?
Well,
Because,
the challenge with waiting, then this is the question is, what's the duration the contractors have proposed? Contractors, if they propose 6 months, I don't know that they have, but let's say they did. Contractors are always hesitant to run into a rainy season. So, if the longer there's a delay,
mhm.
then, the contractor's choice.
If we wait till
Uh,
next month, to the next meeting, it's another month. I, I,
well,
I would
exactly.
think that as soon as we get the analysis, and maybe we need to check, will it really be here Friday? And if so, we set a meeting for Monday.
For this committee.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I just don't know how, I didn't know how, don't know how this committee operates. So um,
We, there are no rules here.
there are no rules.
Is it
You just
possible?
so here's the deal. So the money, there was about 1,700,000 in the bank for this project. And there are bids that are less than 1,700,000 and substantially more than 1,700,000. Typically, you go in the middle. But again, that's what's the recommendation by Avalar and the engineers,
hmm
who are the engineers, and did the lower three provide and bid
Mhm.
to spec with no alternates. And then it's a pretty quick decision. So if the answer then becomes the one that, they're all qualified because they all bid.
Well,
So it goes pretty fast.
in addition to the contract, bid price based on the accepted quote, we have, I think, it's like several tens of $1,000s we're going to pay to uh, Avalar to manage it. And
Oh yeah.
as Diana, or excuse me, Christina mentioned, we need to anticipate change orders. And I don't know, would a rule of thumb be we'd need to add 10% just for change orders, just in terms of what we
Tanya,
have as a
no.
budget?
Well, so this is where soft and hard costs have escaped oftentimes. Soft costs are very pricey. And I will give you the example of the chimney kiln. The soft costs in the chimney kiln are 25% of the hard costs of the job,
Hmm.
which is an outrageous number. Um, we are looking at another 100 grand in soft costs on this project, plus the permit. So, it could be another 100 grand. So there's a lot in soft costs that have to be captured. So when people look at, oh, we have a bid for 1,300,000, well, then you need to add in all the soft costs.
Well,
So
I would expect Avalar, tell me, Sarah, if you agree, but I would expect Avalar to not only tell us if they are all confirm that they all had the same specs to bid on, but also a little bit of criteria uh, in whether they can, the feasibility and how much we should add for cost overruns. Wouldn't they give us that information? I mean, we're paying them.
it's a industry standard. If the spec is good and the contractor bid accurately, the change orders should be 10% or less.
Okay, well, that's something.
Okay, so that means a tight spec and there's no mystery.
Okay,
However, I'm going to take a sure guess that there is exceptions in every one of those general contractors' bids for precisely the following reason, that there is discovery to be had when the shingle siding gets ripped off. And if what's discovered is rotted sheetrock, then that's not in the plans. And
correct.
those are change orders. So when you're doing this type of work, you don't include the undiscoverables. Then those things will be discovered, but yet to be determined.
Right.
We did destructive testing about 4 years ago, and who's to say the condition of what's under the shingles now? But that is an uncontrollable.
Right.
That's change orders for things that are not in the spec. As for the soft costs, I understand that Richard Woodhouse has been selected to do construction administration. I believe, but we should check
Well,
on
we have the, yeah,
that.
we have an option to use him, just like if we decided pull the plug on Richard Woodhouse, we could do that, just like we've canceled or changed the contract with Avalar to break it up into pieces, and we've reduced contract. We could, with other vendors, we could certainly do the same if we decide we don't need Richard to be our eyes and ears, that we can rely on Avalar to do that. So that one of the reasons that at least to this point we've had Richard as our eyes and ears on this thing is that has not been an expression of confidence that Avalar will be looking out for our best interests. I don't know if it's
Well,
true,
well, well, not so. Everybody charges.
right?
Richard Woodhouse charges a pricey amount, and he has submitted a CA agreement that's pricey. So is Avalar. That's a job function. And everybody charges for it. So construction administration costs money. And Avalar, I would always prefer Avalar. I mean, look, I'm not a fan of Avalar, but it's their drawings and their specs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something goes wrong, I'd rather tag the architect and engineer
Mm-hmm.
and not a third party person. But both people are charging about the same amount for CA. And CA, construction administration, CA, is a function of a job. But when I talk about soft costs, it's a soft cost, but it's pricey. So, you know, there could be 250 grand in soft costs on top of the construction contract and before the change orders come in.
Right. So we're having 1.7 currently in the bank is not sufficient.
Well, it could be if you pick the guy for 1,200,000, providing for 1,300,000, but that provides that
Yeah.
everything goes smoothly and they don't discover, you know, weeping walls and
Mm-hmm.
a plywood that's been rotted through. We don't know that. So
How long would any idea how long the permitting process? I mean, that may wipe out the entire construction period just waiting for City of Richmond to issue a permit.
they don't take that long. I work with the City of Richmond Building Department all the time. Um, I I'm not going to be involved in what happened in the past, but um, it can go pretty quick. You know, if the
And
submittal is good, it's just reciting. We're not building a building,
yeah, and
right?
so to this point, they have not seen Avalar's drawings. Is that correct? The
No,
city,
they wouldn't have any reason, but
right.
um, a reciting project is a pretty simple project, and I use that term simple. There isn't anything being altered. There is a new siding material, but you know everybody's going to have a look at it, and if the submittal for the permit is a good submittal
Hmm.
from the contractor. So remember, the contractor becomes the responsible party. So they
Hmm.
submit for the building permit, you know, if they are putting in a good submittal that's clean, then
Hmm.
it goes pretty quick.
Richard, did you have something you were trying to say earlier?
Yeah, I was just so is it possible to get Avalar to send us copies of these of the bids?
I would
Of how
assume they
they
would be
are?
included with their summary.
Who
I
are they
would
sending the summary to?
I would like to think we'd have everything. We'd have the contractor bid,
Yeah.
the RFQ, and their summary so that
Yeah.
we could.
My understanding, Christina, from the email that I saw is they are sending these materials to Diana at Collins. So I'll after this meeting, I'll send an email to her that we need to have them forwarded ASAP to the committee so it can begin its evaluation. And I'll make sure that I would assume they all the actual bids would be included as well. Otherwise, what we're totally reliant on Avalar's take on that, and I would not be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I
Well,
wouldn't be.
and that's also where this question of did Richard Woodhouse get a contract for bid review and assessment? And if he did, then that would be under his purview to review these bids.
I
You know,
don't know that. And I think Diana will know.
yeah, she
Okay.
will, and I, I'm pretty sure there's a contract option or for his managing the project if we used him for that what's called the third phase in the way we split up Avalar. There's a much smaller amount he on the uh, this stage of evaluating it. Originally was pretty high, but Dan worked with him. And I think he got it down to a few $1,000s. So I'm not as worried that we're excessively double dipping at that step, but we would be if we have both. Well, we just wouldn't need both of them at the final step of the actual construction.
Well, that's the CA portion. So right now we're
Yeah,
talking about is there redundancy in the bidding? And I, we
the-
need to know that. And then for the CA, you have one person doing CA.
yeah,
And typically you have the one that did the construction drawings
right.
because they're the ones that answer the field questions.
Hmm. Okay,
I mean,
well,
Richard Woodhouse is not the architect of record or the
right.
engineer of record. And so field questions come in from a GC, and I'm just going by experience. I built a lot of buildings. That having a third party that wasn't responsible for the drawings wouldn't necessarily be able to give good clarification. They could do field assessment, but it just, it's something to seriously think
Yeah, it's
about.
pretty shaky. I understand. Well, I will, as soon as we get the stuff we can, excuse me, I'll make sure Diana gets it distributed to everybody and we'll get back together on that project as soon as we can.
Do we know who would be issuing the contracts? Is this going to be a Brickyard Landing or Collins contract to the
Brickyard
successful bidder?
Landing.
Or it
Yeah,
would
it'd
be,
be Brickyard Landing.
and we would do the change orders as well. So there's no.
Yeah, I think like in all the stuff that we've been doing recently on the electronic gates, that any change orders, we sign off on.
Yep.
Gene has been signing off on those, I believe. And okay, yeah, the schedule is pretty compressed. If let's go on to I wanted to go on to the elevator thing. I don't know. Have you all received the copies of that yet? Diana was going to send them today.
No, I haven't gotten anything from her.
No.
Okay, what the board? Some of you may have seen we asked Collins to get alternate bid proposals from people to be our elevator management company because we've had so much trouble with the current ones. I guess San Francisco elevator or something like that. And so Brent, the project manager from Collins, got 7 bids and he made a table comparing those. And the board at the last meeting asked to refer those to the SPC so we could get some feedback. They didn't get sent out for whatever reason. I think so. Diana said I thought she said she'd get them out today, but the timeline for turning that around isn't all that, you know, it doesn't take precedent, for example, over the Pinnacle siding. My thinking is on the elevator one, and this is just me talking, not a board directive or anything, is that it would be, not until at least the end of July that we would be thinking we would have some kind of a recommendation from this committee to the board if we want to switch and, to which one.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an upcoming project.
I have a question on that.
Hmm. Yeah,
And who is the installer of the new elevators?
I'm pretty sure it's this. Well, they didn't.
San Francisco elevator,
Yeah,
right?
they upgraded stuff. It's not actual. The elevators weren't replaced, but the electronics were there was
Or the
something.
upgrades. And
Yeah,
wasn't they were selected because of their all-in wonderfulness of
which has not
that
proven
they
to be
could be, yeah, exactly.
and yeah, and they have their call out for any kind of repair is like a
Yeah,
minimum of $1,000, and they're out here almost every week, have been.
right.
The weird thing, and you'll see this when you get to the materials that Brent put together, is I believe it was San Francisco in their contract. There's a clause, it's like a 5-year contract, and I think we're in
Mhm.
year 2 maybe, and they
Right.
get paid for a whole bunch, most of the remainder if we decide to leave them early.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, there was big fanfare about San Francisco elevator compared to the one that was previously on site. Uh, but it doesn't sound like they've,
Doesn't
um,
sound like they've panned
no,
out.
no.
So that was just so I guess that the committee needs to be ready to receive that information. Um, the last thing I have is that We are gonna, Sally has been working with Richard Wodehouse on this leak stuff, and the there's on the bid pack board proposal for tomorrow, bid packet for tomorrow, we have a couple of proposals to have Richard Wodehouse paying him to evaluate all these issues so that we and give us a guidance on what it is we need to then go out to bid for. And I think the amount of those collectively is about $8,000. In addition, there's a contract for a company which he's recommending to paint all the metal above the roof line. So all the sheet metal, that's the flat sheet metal and the chimney, to paint those for all 5 buildings, and that one's around 60,000. So Sally is going to, assuming we move forward to have Richard Wodehouse evaluate things, this group would then need to look at what he's recommending because we aren't going to be able to do all the work all at once, and we're going to need to feed it into the reserve process. And, so this group might be able to prioritize which are the most important ones to get done based on whatever information we have available. So that's another thing that is coming.
Has he written a proper scope for what's he
Uh,
proposing for $8,000? I know we have talked endlessly about project management scope
it's
and work scope, and I have yet to see anything from him regarding the long list of leaks. But now I'm hearing he's proposing $8,000, but I would be looking for the scope document on that.
in terms of it being a proper scope. I don't think it's a proper scope. He's going to spend so much time doing something, but in terms of clearly defining the deliverable and that sort of thing, if,
I don't know how we can keep going on like this. I mean, I'm just put that out there.
yeah,
I am shocked, and I feel very strongly that we need to
right.
rein this in
Well,
and stop this
yeah,
and get it done, documented properly.
I'll convey that.
I'm just putting that out there. I mean, everybody
No,
on this committee,
and I agree with you. I
this
agree
is
with you.
crazy. It's
I
crazy.
worked a little bit with Sally to try to get a real scope, but we didn't quite get there. So
But it doesn't make it okay that we now just spend another 8 grand because he says that's what it's going to cost for him to look at all the leaks. We've spent a year now talking about him and scoping and the work, and I don't feel that we've moved. I mean, I wrote a big
mhm.
project management document back in February, and now I'm hearing that he wants 8 grand to, the leak list. Well, I've seen the leak list. Um, but I'm just, from a professionalism, I am sure very concerned.
Okay. We'll need to, that will need to be addressed.
I mean, have
Beth,
you some thoughts on this? Is this,
I think we need someone to do this work, but I think you're right that it needs to be more clearly specified what time it's going to take and what the deliverable is and
right.
what we are then going to do with it. But we don't have anybody qualified to look at it's at this stuff. It's the patios, what they're calling these crickets on the roof,
Yeah, it's the decks. I mean, it's everything that we've
right.
literally talked
And
about for 8 years.
so I think it's legit. I think would be legitimate to have someone do a visual evaluation of those and recommend you're going to need to do. This is what's unclear. Is it going to be a recommendation? Well, yeah, you'll need to do 10 or 20 decks sometime in the future, or is it going to be you need to do the decks on building units 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, And I don't think it's going to be that. So it's not, it's going to be a kind of a loosey-goosey result in terms of what guidance we're going to get. And that's where I'm kind of hesitant. And maybe I'm
Uh,
thinking that we could get more detailed information from him. Maybe I'm incorrect in thinking that.
well, we have now spent gobs of money, not only on Mr. Woodhouse, but on the Murray contractors, along with the Pendleton contractors, and everybody was charged with a different scope. Murray was charged of doing deck evaluation in buildings. I think they did A and B, and they wrote a loose report. Then we had, I think Pendleton did a building.
They did.
And these are,
They did a building that a repair that had been contracted by the person who lives there. And so we kind of assumed that responsibility because that homeowner wanted to get it done quickly. And the
But,
board made that decision. I can't remember. Do you remember that, John?
well,
oh, I
are you
remember the
referring to
situation.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes, that is correct.
but that
I'm talking about assessment of decks, plural, meaning
yeah.
common area. And so
Ah.
Murray about 3 years ago got paid to evaluate 2 buildings, all the decks, common areas.
Okay.
Then I think Pendleton was asked to do 1 building. So this is all common areas,
By
all the
do one
decks.
building, do decks on one building?
Correct, to evaluate, go and look and write a report about the concrete that was cracking or the dry rot they found on the sliding door trim.
Okay.
And so both of those contractors, I believe Pendleton did a building, but Murray did 2 buildings, and it's all in writing. I've seen it.
Yes,
And it was,
I've not heard about those studies
yeah.
before.
So it was done, and it was evaluation of the common areas, the decks, primarily for this topic, which is
Hmm.
what's happening and what is the deteriorating condition of the decks. And in fact, it was very useful because many of the decks have conditions that are deteriorating, whether it be cracked concrete or the underlayment. There's dry rot in the door frames. So it was useful to do this assessment. Nothing happened with it, but I'm just saying now bringing in this other person, granted it's a quote unquote leak report, you can't, while you're busy trying to tackle the leaks in the dam, you need to do some of the investigatory
Yeah,
analysis. And so there's a couple of things happening that all need
right.
attention. But a lot of this work has been done, and
Well,
I think
I'll
that we need
check
to
with,
look at that.
yeah, I had not heard of the work by Murray in the past, so let me see if I can
Yeah,
track that down. The work with Zingali, that was one of those leaking attic spaces
yeah.
and I think they were going to use Pendleton. They like one Pendleton or Murray, I don't remember which one.
And they like
But the work,
Pendleton.
but the work has never been done, as far as I know.
I
Even
thought
though
they had
we,
already started it. I thought they had already started it because they really wanted to get that done
oh, I
quickly.
know. That's why I'm surprised. I've never seen any bills come through for it. Have you?
No.
I think for
Well,
some reason it's not been started, and I don't know what that is.
well, we should find out about that one. It was pricey, and then it did not include the interiors, which seems to still be a sore spot as to his attic, and then the sheetrock, and then who was going to pay for his living room wall that had damage. And we have a walls out policy or walls in policy, but all I'm saying is this is not clear what is happening, and with the massive cost of 600 grand or something last year, it will continue to escalate, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
we really must get a handle on the plan. as to existing leaks and mitigation, repair, and then some proactive actions.
Well,
But
and
there,
that's what we're hoping to, what we're seeking to get by working with Richard Wodehouse. But, perhaps we're not getting a tight enough spec to him so that we're getting a proposal for what he proposes is what we want. Um,
I
but
think he knows what we want. We yet again need to. We are expecting a document from him that you can address current conditions, leaks and repair and mitigation, and then what's proactive to do assessments. And I think I wrote in the project management report, anybody seeking to do this work should avail themselves to assessments that have been done recently.
mhm.
I mean, that's only natural. I just
Okay.
think that there's just a lot of information and it could easily be compiled.
Yeah, and that it exists, and well, maybe the management company has forgotten that it exists. Maybe they don't know it exists. I don't know.
Oh, they know it exists. I mean, we paid for it, and it was only I want to say 3 years ago. Mike Carnell knows about it. So
Yeah,
it just was one of the, and then Murray's gone away. I mean, Murray was the fan favorite of Brickyard for a while. Um,
hmm
but all I'm saying is this work has been done. Some assessments have been done, and operating in that collaboration, it would be beneficial to assemble all the work and all the studies and all the investigation and all the deck inspections that have been done and the findings.
hmm
And then because it's all right there. And then, I got the leak report. So we add that on and pretty soon, it's less of a jigsaw puzzle. It's just a sorting process.
hmm
Unfortunately, nothing's related to anything else, but that's the nature of um, deterioration and aging properties. But it can all be easily sorted.
Yeah, it's just assigning a staff person to do the sorting, and that hasn't
Well,
been happening. That hasn't happened.
no, and I am not certain that will. I don't. That's not what Collins, as I understand it, is contracted for. I think they're contracted for
Well, they would be
administrative
the,
services,
but
and then
they would be the source for all the documents that need to be compiled. Is that correct?
well, I would think so. I mean, we got a leak report. That one's pretty simple to figure out.
Well,
Somebody has a leak and then they call. The Murray stuff, that exists. And any others, and these were all paid for, right? Money changed hands from Brickyard Landing account to these contractors. So I'm merely suggesting that it could be relatively easy to get a hold of it. Well, Mike Carnell has it. Collins has it. Brickyard Landing has it. But then we're all looking at stuff, and it would be beneficial then if the Brickyard Landing chooses to work with Richard Woodhouse, that there be a team meeting, right, for an approach to um, leak repair, and then some that might need some preventative measures, so to speak.
mhm. Well, it's certainly the
Otherwise,
direction Sally's trying to go, but it's like I don't.
I am voicing my concern of somebody saying, I'm going to charge you $8,000 to
Right,
take a look at this leak report, without the value add of the entire property. I
right.
think that's isolated. Um, somebody has a leak. Okay, well, we're going to put it on the list. And then this person's going to charge $250 an hour to figure out where the leak came from. To be fair, um, water, as we all know, travels its own path, typically downward to the lowest point. And one of the concerns is that chasing water is a water intrusion scope. And water intrusion scoping is often different than somebody coming out looking at a leak. So I'm just putting that out there. Water could be coming in from a deck breach, 3 doors down from
Mm-hmm.
the unit underneath that. So water intrusion is a speciality,
Mm-hmm.
and we only have water leaks. I'm not talking about somebody's internal plumbing. So these are rainwater leaks. Water's coming in. It's a water intrusion. Where it ends up is the downhill exiting of water. But somebody has to be really knowledgeable in that. And so I yet again, with $8,000, I would want to know, what's the expertise in water intrusion. And so I'm just pointing out that there's a bigger situation here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm sure it'll be back
Yeah.
soon.
And I don't mean to rain on this, no pun intended. I just, I am just, a lot of money's being spent for an
Well,
hourly
I
person.
appreciate your feedbacks, Sarah. You have
Yeah.
lots of experience, and for my part, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Well, I'm just here to help, but I see it clearly, and I think this is just chasing stuff that we we need all the pieces together before, paying somebody to go look at a leak.
Mhm.
Well, okay, well, I'll bring that perspective into the discussion of this item in the board meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a positive discussion. That is
Mm-hmm.
for sure. I mean, I've been fighting for years about, the water leaks and situations of, it's going to get bigger, and it's bigger, but it will continue to climb. And so all of this great attention to looking at it now is fantastic, but I think we truly want to approach it methodically
Mm-hmm.
and with some surgical precision. It doesn't matter that water has its own life. Um, there's a way to chase water. And so I just think that we want to get our arms around all of it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, are there any other items that we want to go over? I mean, I'm just,
Not from me.
yeah, these
There's
are the
a
ones I
possible
could,
meeting on Monday. Is that correct? Is that how we
correct,
do it?
yeah. Or early next week if we have the materials needed for the discussion.
Right.
Okay. Perfect. Well, I've got to jump. Thank you all for letting me join.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
We'll all be in touch.
Okay, great.
All right, well, I guess that wraps it up. Dick, do you have anything you?
No, I was just looking at my calendar, see what I had on Monday.
Uh-huh. Well, hopefully we have it that quickly.
Yeah.
We'll see. Well, Christina, thank you for hosting the meeting.
No problem.
And
So it's recording. I'm going to pause it now.